Good afternoon, sports fans, and welcome to another episode of the Sports 2.0 show. My name is Dan Bradley. We're thrilled you could join us for this afternoon's NHL trade deadline special. Unfortunately, Eric Neff, scheduled to be one of our guests this afternoon, has come down with the flu. He will not be joining us for the show today, but we send our best to Eric, hoping for a quick recovery for him, and perhaps he'll be back for Wednesday's show. In the meantime, want to go over some of the big trades that have come through on the NHL's trade deadline today. Even one that just broke about 15 minutes ago. Really a very active trade deadline, which was a bit surprising in some regards. With the COVID-19 protocols in place, players having to quarantine for 7 days upon arriving with a new team, a shortened 56-game season, and a flat salary cap as well over the next few years. The Seattle expansion draft coming at the end of the season. There were a lot of factors that came into play for this year's trade deadline. Want to start with what's probably the biggest move, and that is Taylor Hall. We had a feeling that he signed a one-year, $8 million deal with the Buffalo Sabres this offseason. That deal clearly has not worked out. The Sabres with a historic 18-game losing streak. They moved on from Eric Staal, and now Taylor Hall and Curtis Lazar have been traded to the Boston Bruins for Anders Bjork and a second-round pick. This trade is a slam dunk for the Boston Bruins. Really didn't have to give up a whole lot. They get a former Hart Trophy winner, a league MVP in Taylor Hall, added to the lineup. David Pastrnak has struggled in recent weeks, 4 even-strength points in those last 18 games. So getting Taylor Hall to add to their scoring depth, getting some center depth as well with Lazar. He'll be playing bottom 6 minutes for the Bruins, but depth is absolutely everything, especially with the pandemic going on right now. It's a really, really good get for Boston and a really underwhelming return for Buffalo Sabres fans. Really kind of a head scratcher looking at this from the outside, especially looking at the returns on some of the other trades, which we'll go over here shortly. Really an underwhelming performance from the Buffalo Sabres at the trade deadline. Next up, a big acquisition for a division rival there is the New York Islanders, bringing in Kyle Palmieri and Travis Zajac from the New Jersey Devils. They sent 2 prospects and 2 picks, including a first-rounder in this upcoming draft. After the injury to Islanders captain Anders Lee, looking for some additional scoring that could contribute during the playoffs, Kyle Palmieri had a bit of a down year with the Devils, but he has already found the back of the net for the Islanders this season. Since arriving in the trade, I believe it was in his debut with the Islanders that he scored a goal. Zajac, another depth move as well. It's a really good fit for the Islanders. And for the Devils, getting the prospects and the picks, Devils are a young team. They're rebuilding. We knew Palmieri was going to be on the move. It's a little bit surprising that Zajac was thrown in as well, but moving Palmieri was pretty much a given. His contract is expiring at the end of the year. He's set to become an unrestricted free agent. Devils, no shot at making the playoffs this year. So Palmieri goes to a contender. The Islanders, a very good defensive team, so adding that scoring punch should be a very good thing. A very good thing for the Islanders. Next up, another really big move, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Maple Leafs are all in on a Stanley Cup run this year. They've got the team to do it, and they've already made 2 big additions. The first one, bringing in goaltender David Rittich from Calgary. Big Save Dave, as he's become known by Flames fans. The Maple Leafs have had a few holes in the net recently. While Jack Campbell has played well, there are some concerns about whether or not he'll be able to backstop a team through a Stanley Cup run. Frederik Andersen, some down numbers this year as well. A sub-900 save percentage. Goals against average is creeping up around 3. And he's been hurt for the last several weeks. Unsure of when Andersen might return to the ice. So it's a big get for Toronto to bring in David Rittich, backstop things for the Maple Leafs, and at the cost of a 3rd-round pick as well. Really some smart asset management there from Toronto. But then it gets even better because they also added Nick Foligno from Columbus. They had a 3-team swap that worked out there. So Nick Foligno to the Maple Leafs adding to their forward core. Who needs defense when you're going to be scoring 8 goals a game? Foligno adds an element of toughness, an element of leadership to the team as well. Maple Leafs really going all in at the trade deadline. The big move that broke about 15 minutes ago that we alluded to is the Washington Capitals bringing in Anthony Mantha from the Detroit Red Wings in exchange for Jacob Vrana, Richard Panik, and a first and a second round pick. The first round pick is in this upcoming draft, and the second round pick is in the 2022 draft. Some big move for the Capitals. Really kind of the big blockbuster deal of the day and really of the deadline as a whole. Taylor Hall, who we mentioned earlier, is probably the biggest name to be moved, but this is the biggest return by far for any player. And if you compare career stats side by side, Hall compared to Mantha. Now, Mantha had been playing for Detroit. Detroit has not been a competitive team for a couple of years. Mantha, one of the better players on the Red Wings, along with Dylan Larkin. It's possible that a change of scenery really sparks his game, and going from a team that is kind of a bottom feeder and didn't have a whole lot of direction over the last couple of seasons, going to the Capitals, who won the Stanley Cup a few years ago. They're a perennial threat to make a Stanley Cup run, really gearing up in a stacked East Division. It looks like the winner of the East Division, that might be your Cup favorite at this point. It's going to be a war of attrition to get there, but whoever comes out of the East Division is really going to have to have gone through the ringer and will be ready for a deep playoff run. Going over some of the other moves here, the Tampa Bay Lightning added David Savard in a 3-team deal with Columbus and Detroit. So Detroit, again, stockpiling the picks. Columbus stockpiling the picks, working through some of those movable assets as best they could. Players on some expiring deals. Mantha, back to him for just a moment, does have 3 more years after this season on his term. So he does have some term on the deal. That came into play a little bit more with the return there. But Vrana, Panik, and 2 picks, a first and a second rounder, just a really big return from the Caps. So they see something in Mantha's game that they like. They've committed to him for the long term. They're all in. Tampa Bay, back to Tampa Bay, shoring up that blue line depth. We saw with Ryan McDonough out a couple weeks ago some concerns with Tampa Bay's blue line. We know that Andrei Vasilevsky is just fine in net. We know that with all of the forwards that Tampa Bay has, they're going to be just fine. Scoring is not going to be an issue, but it's going to be how many quality scoring chances against do they get. Tampa Bay adds some size with David Savard. Savard, more of a shutdown defenseman. He'll break the puck out of the zone quickly, but he doesn't contribute nearly as much in the offensive zone as Victor Hedman, which is just fine. Hedman can handle things on the offensive side. McDonough can handle things on the offensive side. Savard, on the other hand, more of a shutdown type of role, a physical type of player, a get under your skin type of player, plays with an edge. So add some toughness to Tampa Bay as well, who big horse is still in the barn there. Nikita Kucherov, after offseason hip surgery, he has not played at all this season. He's not going to be playing in the regular season. Could return for the first round of the playoffs. That seems a little unlikely at this point. He's only just started skating a couple weeks ago. Still looked to be labored in his skating stride, in his technique. Still trying to piece all of the things together there. So Tampa Bay going out and getting Savard. We know the forwards will be fine, but that's a great move to bulk up their defense. Not to be outdone, the Florida Panthers bring in Brandon Montour from Buffalo for a 2021 third-round pick. Montour, a right-shot defenseman. After Aaron Ekblad went down, Montour moves in to take on both that physical role and bring some offensive upside. With Buffalo, of course, is a team we didn't necessarily see as much, but we've seen it from Montour in the past. Helps bolster the Florida blue line. Florida not done there. Also brought in Sam Bennett from the Calgary Flames for a prospect and a second-round pick. That gives Sam Bennett a little more time to transition away from Calgary. He's kind of sputtered there. Bennett was a first-round pick. I want to say it was in the 2015 draft. It was either the 2014 or 2015 draft. But never really found his game with Calgary, still trying to work things out there. So a change of scenery could be good, and joining a team who, again, Florida is for real. If you're not watching the Florida Panthers right now, you are missing out. They are playing some great hockey. Florida is becoming the hockey hotbed of the NHL. We saw Tampa Bay win the cup last year. Now the Panthers are a very, very good hockey team. They've gone toe-to-toe with the Lightning. They've gone toe-to-toe with the Carolina Hurricanes. A lot of really big moves there. In a goaltending move, our second big goaltending move, Devin Dubnyk from the Colorado Avalanche, traded from San Jose. Colorado shipped out Greg Pateryn and a fifth-round pick. Similar to Toronto, Colorado has had some goaltending issues over the last couple of weeks, with Pavel Francouz out for the entire season it's been so far. No timetable on when he might be back. Hunter Miska has struggled behind Philip Grubauer. Grubauer with a very heavy workload so far this season. He leads the league in shutouts. He's top 3 in wins, top 3 in goals against, top 3 in save percentage. But with nobody behind him, Colorado a little bit concerned about the goaltending depth there. So adding Devin Dubnyk, who made a few very good playoff runs with the Minnesota Wild, at one point sparking them from a last place in the NHL team, carrying through and playing about all but 2 games from January 1st onward, leading the Minnesota Wild to the playoffs. Colorado hoping that Dubnyk can recapture some of that magic and be a stopgap, serviceable backup for Philip Grubauer, giving him a little bit of a breather down the stretch so that Grubauer can be the guy come playoff time. Not a whole lot given up on this move. Pateryn had only played 8 games for the Avalanche this year. 5th-round pick thrown in as well. So it's not as big a return as you might expect. Dubnyk's numbers have been down, especially since going to San Jose. However, with the team that Colorado would be putting out in front of him, that's going to be a very good club, the Colorado Avalanche, looking like the favorite to win the West Division, only getting stronger as the trade deadline has gone on. Next up, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Penguins added Jeff Carter for conditional draft picks in 2022 and 2023. The 2022 pick is a 3rd rounder, and the 2023 is a 4th. Adding some cup cred. Jeff Carter, a huge piece of 2 Stanley Cup runs with the Los Angeles Kings. Adding in some forward depth there behind Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Jake Gensel. The Penguins, trading for Jeff Carter, adding in some depth there. The goaltending still concerns me a little bit. Tristan Jarry and Casey DeSmith, they've been playing better since the start of the season. I really thought the Penguins might go out and grab another defenseman. It's kind of been a revolving door on the blue line over the last couple of weeks for the Penguins. But getting Jeff Carter, it's a good move. He's a shutdown player. He's a scorer. He comes through with big goals and big moments. An all-around good get for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Going to run through real quick a couple of other lesser moves from the deadline. Islanders adding Braden Coburn, another depth defenseman move there. Maple Leafs getting Riley Nash from Columbus, a depth forward. Nash, a very physical player, probably a 4th-line minute type of guy, maybe a little bit of penalty kill time as well, but another low-risk move to add some depth for the Maple Leafs. That 7th-round pick becomes a 6th-round pick if Nash plays in at least 25% of Toronto's playoff games. Montreal Canadiens making a move. They traded for John Merrill and sent back to Detroit a prospect and a 5th-round pick. Merrill was the only defenseman with the Detroit Red Wings this year with a positive plus-minus rating. He was +2. He had no goals and 5 assists at the time of the trade. Really the gold standard for a shutdown defenseman. He's not going to contribute very much in the offensive zone, but he's a physical player, does an excellent job of limiting scoring chances for the opposition. And for the Canadiens as well, after losing Victor Mete to waivers, going to the Ottawa Senators, adding in Merrill is a bit of an upgrade in that department. He'll probably slot in on the bottom pairing, but may be able to move up to top 4 minutes. I don't think he'd play top 2, but maybe top 4 minutes for the Canadiens. Another good depth move there. Devils traded for Jonas Siegenthaler from the Caps for a 3rd-round pick. The Boston Bruins also added more defensive depth with Mike Riley. Bruins have had a bunch of injuries on the defensive front. Charlie McAvoy has been out. Brandon Carlo has been out since being concussed by Tom Wilson. Came back for a game and then had another upper body injury unrelated to the concussion. So just adding some extra depth there is good. The Vegas Golden Knights got some center depth in Matthias Janmark in a deal with Chicago. Oilers shored up their blue line, bringing in Dmitry Kulikov. Um, really stocking up on picks and prospects. The Blackhawks, excuse me, have been very active at the trade deadline. A lot of minor moves here and there, acquiring a bunch of draft capital, trying to take advantage of some of the cap space. They didn't quite do as much with that as I thought that they might. The Blackhawks had 20 million plus in deadline cap room because of all the long-term injured reserve cases that they have. Jonathan Taves moves, I think, on his own pretty close to about $10 million just on his contract. Brent Seabrook, long-term injured retirement situation there, that adds about another $5 million in cap room. So they had $20 million in long-term injured reserve cap space they could have played with. We saw some other teams really take advantage of that. Columbus and Detroit coming to mind. San Jose to an extent as well. But the Blackhawks really bringing in the picks and prospects, restocking the cupboard, getting as many bodies in there as they can. After their cup runs over the last couple of years, the cupboard was kind of bare. So restocking everything here, getting some players and pieces in that can help rebuild for their next cup run. Really a good move there. Another late breaking move. Hurricanes added Yanni Hakanpää and a 6th-round pick for Hayden Fleury, got him from the Ducks. So Hayden Fleury to the Ducks. Yanni Hakanpää, big physical defenseman, fits kind of a niche role within the Hurricanes defense. Hurricanes have a lot of skilled defensemen, guys like Dougie Hamilton, guys like Jacob Slavin, who contribute all over the ice. Hamilton in particular, a very good offensive defenseman. Fleury kind of had that role, but didn't have the same skill set that Hamilton had. So Fleury was kind of the odd man out there. Jake Bean coming in and playing very, very well this season for the Hurricanes kind of made Fleury an odd man out situation there. So adding Hakanpää in to fit that physical defenseman type of role, somebody who can shut down Florida forwards, who can shut down Tampa Bay forwards, really shoring up the blue line for the Carolina Hurricanes. The Colorado Avalanche brought back Carl Soderberg, adding to their center depth. Avs, as I mentioned earlier, looking like favorites in the West Division. Soderberg played for the Avalanche for a few years. He's kind of bounced around the league a little bit, but now back to Colorado. Soderberg, good on the penalty kill, excellent in the face-off dot, all things that the Avalanche need to get ready for their cup run. So now that we're through kind of the main deals, there are a couple other minor deals that have gone through, but wanted to touch on the biggest winners and losers of the trade deadline. Looking at winners, I think the Toronto Maple Leafs are big winners. They've shown that they are committed, they are all in, and they are trying to win this thing right now. One way or another, Toronto is either going to win a cup this year or there is going to be a miserable offseason with a lot of change, a lot of turnover. The expansion draft with Seattle coming up could bring about some changes. But Toronto, with this core, needs to win, and they need to win now. They showed their fans they're committed to winning. They went out and got their backup goaltender. They're ready there. They went out and got depth forward with Nash, and then bringing in Nick Foligno for the leadership factor and for everything that Foligno brings as a past 30-goal scorer as well to the table. Somebody who can contribute in the middle six part of that lineup. Toronto Maple Leafs, big, big winners at the deadline. Another big winner is the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Chicago Blackhawks. I'm lumping both of them together for what they did with the manipulation of their prospects, with the taking on of salary to acquire picks and being a third team in those deals. You don't see a lot of three-team trades in the NHL. You see that a bit more with the NBA, maybe a little bit with baseball here and there as well, but really kind of a rare thing for the NHL to do, to have a three-team trade. I hope that that's a trend that continues. Teams taking advantage of that open cap space, moving picks around. The Lightning on their deal, they are paying 25% of where do I have it here? Of David Savard's contract. They're paying 25% of Savard's contract because Columbus is retaining 50%, Detroit retaining another 25%. So all said and done, Tampa Bay only paying about $1.25 million of that cap hit, with all of the money that they have tied up into their forwards, into Hedman, McDonough, Vasilevsky. Really didn't have a whole lot of space to do things. Julien Brisebois, GM for Tampa Bay, really getting creative with the salary cap usage there. And then for the biggest loser, I hate to say it, but I think the biggest loser is the Buffalo Sabres. And I feel bad because it's already been such a miserable year for Sabres fans. I don't want to kick them when they're down. But the Sabres really not taking the fullest advantage of the trade deadline that they could. They did move Eric Staal to the Montreal Canadiens a couple weeks ago, moving Montour and moving Taylor Hall and Curtis Lazar in on that deal as well. But when we're looking at these returns on other players, we're seeing Sam Bennett get a second-round pick in return for Sam Bennett. We're seeing Anthony Mantha, who does not have a third of the career numbers that Taylor Hall has put up, bringing in first and second round picks and two capable NHL players. Vrana could easily play top six, maybe even top line minutes for Detroit right now. Panik, a third line guy, maybe a fourth, but probably closer to a third line guy for Detroit. With that big of a return, the Sabres really left a lot on the table at the trade deadline here. And the Washington Capitals as well. I don't want to call them losers necessarily, but a lot of teams did really, really well. Everybody behind the Capitals in the division standings got better. And then the Capitals at the last second, their trade, really a bit of a head scratcher. They gave up a lot to get Anthony Mantha, who has been streaky in his time with Detroit. That was one of the knocks on Jacob Vrana, which is why they wanted to move him out, get somebody a little more consistent in, but really didn't accomplish that with bringing in Mantha. So winners, to recap there, winners, Toronto, Columbus, Chicago. Biggest losers would be Buffalo and Washington. How does this shape things out for the rest of the NHL season and moving into the playoffs? I think the Toronto Maple Leafs are still the team to beat in the North Division. They have been all season. Things have kind of slipped and gotten a little close. The Winnipeg Jets, hot on their tail, but Winnipeg doesn't have the defense. They brought in Jordy Ben from Vancouver, a depth move there, but really didn't do a whole lot to bolster their blue line. I think the Maple Leafs still have the edge in the North. The East Division is going to be chaotic, and I am totally here for it. A lot of crowding at the top of the standings there, where even the fifth and sixth place teams in the standings, the Rangers down in sixth, are, I believe, 5 points out of a playoff spot right now. That's going to be a race to the finish. Anybody in that division has a shot. In particular, the Caps have a very good chance. The Islanders, I think, are going to surprise a lot of people. They have excellent goaltending. Semyon Varlamov has flown under the radar this year, but has been fantastic between the pipes. They play an excellent defensive system under Coach Barry Trotz. Their scoring leaves a little bit to be desired, but they've shown that they can do it. They've shown that they can go toe-to-toe with anybody in the division, shut down their opponents. And when you can't score, you can't win. That's kind of the Islanders' defensive philosophy. So they get under their opponent's skin. They take care of their own end of the ice. They shut their opponents down, and they win a lot of games 1-0, 2-1. I would not be surprised if through the playoffs, the Islanders are the team to come out of that division. For the Central, at the beginning of the season, I predicted the Carolina Hurricanes were going to win the Stanley Cup. They might not take the division. It's going to be very, very close. It's going to come down to the games that they play against Tampa Bay and against Florida down the stretch. Any one of those three teams could take the division. The Red Wings beat the Hurricanes last week. They beat the Tampa Bay Lightning the week before. Florida could sneak through and surprise people here with taking the division. However, I don't see Florida making a deep playoff run. I still think it's going to be the Carolina Hurricanes coming out of that division. That's the Central. And then out west, it's been between Colorado and Vegas for most of the season. Minnesota has played relatively well as of late, but really slipping against the St. Louis Blues, who St. Louis trying to limp their way to the playoffs at this point. Injuries just stockpiling, and it gets worse. I think that's why St. Louis didn't have a particularly active trade deadline today. There was talk of potentially moving Mike Hoffman, who, while he's played okay this year, hasn't really been the fit that St. Louis needed. So St. Louis standing pat at the deadline, probably the right move there. St. Louis might sneak in to that fourth spot, jump over the Arizona Coyotes. But that division really is going to come down to Colorado and Vegas. I think Colorado takes the division. I think they've got a better roster top to bottom. If Grubauer can get some rest with Devin Dubnyk behind him in net, really all Colorado has to do is get there, and I think they can run the table going from there. Now, once the final point standings for the regular season are set up and we know who those final four teams are, it'll be a little bit different this year. We won't have an Eastern Conference final and a Western Conference final. The playoff teams will be reseeded 1 through 4 based on regular season point totals for each of the division winners. 1 will play 4, and the 2 seed will play the 3 seed. So don't want to quite get into all of that, but I believe the Cup final matchup that we're looking for, as I predicted at the beginning of the year, will be the Carolina Hurricanes against the Colorado Avalanche. I'm sticking to my guns. I'm still running with the Carolina Hurricanes, but I believe that is going to be your Stanley Cup final. I want to hear from you, your thoughts on today's trade deadline. Also, we'll be releasing the NHL Power Rankings tomorrow. That's a weekly segment that I've been writing for noobsports.com, so you can head over to noobsports.com, Betting Midwest and Betting Blogger. For more of our trade deadline coverage, noobsports.com is where those power rankings will be. There's going to be a lot of big shakeups this week with all of the trade deadline moves that have been made. But I want to hear from you on Twitter at MulletsVoxDB. Let me know what you think of the trade deadline, who your big winners and losers are, what moves surprised you the most, what moves that weren't made surprised you the most. I want to hear from you on all of those. But that is it for our trade deadline show. I want to thank Tanner Kern and Eric Neff on the production side for getting this put together this afternoon. The Noop Sports team and the Sports 2.0 network going through a few changes over the next couple weeks, and appreciate your patience and sticking it out with us as we go through those changes. We're going to be moving away from our 1-hour Wednesday night show format and bringing up more shows as events happen. So like what we had last week with the Masters, today with the trade deadline, we're going to be doing a little bit more timely content on that side of things. But first and foremost, we just want to hear from you. We want to provide what the people want. So if you let us know, we want to be putting out as many shows for you as we can. Let us know what sporting events are interesting to you as well that you want us to cover, and we will do that. So that said, I want to thank you for joining us for today's NHL trade deadline show. Once again, my name is Dan Bradley. Thank you to Eric Neff. Thank you to Tanner Kern, the Sports 2.0 Network. We'll see you on Wednesday, everybody.